Thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today. My name is David Mosijchuk. I'm account executive at CIC. I'm really excited to have people join and listen in on the session. Got a lot to discuss. Also on the call, we've got Larry Pantus, founder of CIC, as well as other team members. And we also have John Stack, senior account executive at Hyland, joining us. John, want to take a quick minute to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Thanks everybody for the time. Appreciate it. John Stack, as you mentioned, account executive here at Hyland Software, and really welcome the opportunity to help the folks on the line today improve their current solutions and gain efficiencies. So, thanks.
Thank you, John. Of course, we also have all you beautiful people. Thank you again. Today, we're going to be talking about something I know hits home for everyone here. Whether you're in the back office, running operations, no matter what system you're using, it's the daily grind and manual work that just seems to never end. And what we want to show you is how automation, the right tools, and the right partner actually changes that. Not in some abstract, theoretical way with a bunch of AI buzzwords thrown at you. I'm talking about real day-to-day impacts, how your team actually feels about work, transforming how the day actually goes. Because here's the thing, automation isn't really about the software itself. It's about you and your people. It's about getting things right consistently, having processes you can count on, not having everything fall apart when Sarah goes on vacation or when Jim finally retires. After my portion, John's going to come in and give us a high-level picture of what it means to take things to the next level. Regardless of where you are on the automation journey, we're talking about true augmentation and how that can impact the way people work today. You guys ready to jump in? I am. So recently, we were visiting and talking to an AR manager about how life was before and after digitizing. And I remember her saying, my hands were black and reeked of cigarettes, diesel, and coffee. And that phrase really stuck with me. She went on to describe her day-to-day process. Every day, she'd get a stack of tickets that had been hand-collected from all the other plants and then delivered to her. Some came daily, some came weekly, and some showed up whenever. These tickets obviously weren't clean. They lived in a concrete truck, at a dispatch plant, at a job site. So they were covered in dust, grime, stained with coffee, even cigarette ash, and some diesel. Obviously, a lot of them were crumpled up. She said the smell was nauseating. She went on to describe the process as extremely tedious, going through each ticket by ticket by ticket, matching them up to the job, making sure everything was there. And when something was missing, she had to stop, make a call to the plant, interrupt someone else's day, and pretend to be a detective. It was a very manual and tedious process that seemed to never end. It was more than just messy. This manual intake process impacted everything downstream of it. Invoices would get delayed or go out late because the supporting paperwork wasn't there. Cash flow was unpredictable, and month end was a grind that would just burn people out. So the story wasn't so much about dirty tickets and filthy hands. It was about how simple physical problem would turn into accounting nightmares, operational stress, and financial instability. And this is a reality for so many businesses out there. This is a story of one of our current customers, BMC Enterprises. So BMC faced and dealt with that day to day. They're a multi-state producer of ready mix, aggregate, and other building material products. They process thousands of tickets, BOLs, documents across 50 plus locations. Since 2019, they've quadrupled their business in annual revenue received. So complexity and volume has significantly increased for document intake. But what happened when they digitized and automated? Well, first up, the most important, I think, let's talk about the practical impacts of those that matter, the people that make the gears turn. Their workplace got cleaner, safer, no more dirty tickets for them to handle. But more importantly, people started going home on time. They had energy left for their families and their friends, and that month-end burnout, well, that was gone. Less stress across the board. And people finally felt like the work they were doing matters, makes a difference. They felt like they were making a meaningful contribution to the company. Also, productivity. This is where the numbers get wild. Same team sizes, bro, they were doing 4 times the work with no overtime needed. Their throughput per person jumped 300 to 400%, which in practical terms means each person on the AP and AR team was now doing 3 to 4 times more work than they were before, all without having to hire additional staff or work extra hours. Document processing used to take hours, is now down to minutes, so 90-95% faster than it used to be. And finally, they cut over 100 hours from their weekly workflows. That's not a typo, over 100 hours every single week. And here's what the CFOs care about. Turnover on the accounting team, basically eliminated. With BMC, the only staff change they had was someone that had personal aspirations for their own business. They took a lot of stuff that they learned in the accounting department with BMC and OnBase and applied it to their own personal work. We all know it's hard to replace good people, so when people stay on, you benefit. Cash flow became more predictable, and working capital improved. So this wasn't just about efficiency, it was about building a business that actually works for the people running it. Not only does a team operate at a higher level, but they're also driving better outcomes for your customers, the people that pay the bills. So we talked about the results and what that looks like. Let's talk about the how. How do you create these kinds of impacts for your team and business? In BMC's case, it was starting with document management system called OnBase. A lot of business processes today are, even historically, are paper-based. And honestly, it's hard to avoid. It's human nature. We want something tangible, something physical we can touch and hold and manipulate. Just take a look at the incredible things humans have built over the centuries. Paper feels real. But here's the thing. Invoices, BOLs, tickets, all those documents flowing through your operations, they need to become actionable data. And that's what this funnel represents. We're taking those physical documents and turning them into data and workflows that actually do something. Second up, now that we've got the data, now the magic can happen. Credit consumption flows to accounting automatically. Dispatch triggers delivery tickets and attaches them to invoices. Information gets generated and sent to the right places. It's a cycle that runs itself. No one's manually entering the same information 3 different times into 3 different systems. And this is where it all comes together. You've got your accounting systems, Keystone, Acumatica, what have it, Dispatch, Command Cloud, Apex, and then physical hardware introducing documents. At the center of all, you've got OnBase acting as a hub, helping information move back and forth between systems. All right, so we've talked about the results, and you're thinking, sounds great, but why did it actually work, right? Well, there's not secret sauce here, but I think it comes down to 3 main things. Mindset. BMC, from leadership all the way down to folks doing the heavy lifting every single day, everyone bought in. They did not just tolerate this change. They saw the value in it. They committed to making it happen, to making it actually work. Without that, I really doubt that anything would have actually happened. Secondly, familiarity. At SavvySource, we've got industry experience, but we didn't rely on the industry experience to give out solutions. We wanted to understand how BMC actually operated, their quirks, their processes, their pain points, and that allowed us to ask the right questions instead of the wrong ones. It kept us objective about what we were actually accomplishing versus what we thought we were accomplishing. And finally, collaboration. From day one, we weren't just vendors showing up with a checklist. We committed to suggesting projects that would deliver real value, not just to the company's bottom line, but to the individual people doing their work. And BMC, they were all in from the start. We had regular meetings, sometimes 3-4 times a month, with decision makers across the board. That meant good ideas didn't die in committee. They became reality quickly, and they worked. And that's it. Mindset, familiarity, and collaboration. These aren't the end-all and be-all, but In this case, it made a huge difference. So I've done a lot of talking, but it always helps to hear from the customer. John Crumrine, CFO at BMC Enterprises, says, we used to spend all our time sorting paper, checking paper, and chasing missing documents. Now we spend our time actually fixing issues and making decisions. Mike Ranieri, the Director of Operational Technology. Without the integration, we'd be doing everything manually. Exports, spreadsheets, updates every single day. And finally, my favorite quote makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. CIC Source absolutely knocked it out of the park. The deployment was smooth, support was immediate. We didn't have to fight the system, it just worked. So BMC obviously accomplished a ton with what they've done here. But what's next? Where do they go from here? Well, they've got a really strong foundation, and they've got a ton of data in OnBase. They can now leverage that data into custom dashboards that present it in ways that they actually can use. They can continue building automations and integrations that remove manual labor, manual work from the back office, regardless of what it's associated with. And there's Hyland CIC. John's going to break that down for us in the second portion of this webinar, but there's quite a bit here for them to work with. I know I'd be asking, can you duplicate these results elsewhere? Is this something that can translate to other industries? And I'd say absolutely. We've got Ingram Barge. They're a transportation company that operates across almost all major inland waterways across the central and eastern U.S., the Mississippi River Basin, the Ohio River, the Kentucky, just to name a few. Ingram leverages OnBase as a traditional ECM or document management system. With the complexity and breadth of their operations, having the documents and content in one repository simplified and speeds up the process tied to their paperwork. We also have Stevens Group. They're a multidisciplinary company operating out of Canada. They've got ready-mix, aggregate, construction services, and other operations under one umbrella. Each division runs its own workflows, uses different documents, follows different billing rules. That mix of industries creates a level of operational complexity most companies never have to deal with. But they use the same overarching principles to simplify and automate the AP and AR processes. And finally, we've got Precision Heating and Cooling. Precision Heating and Cooling is much smaller than these other examples. They're not in ready mix or aggregate. They're an HVAC service company. But their back office reality still feels familiar. One person handling all of AP, spending hours a month manually checking invoices, matching charges, and fixing mistakes. When they digitized their AP process, 90% of the invoices were processed automatically, significantly reducing workload and errors. These days, the owner finally has his mornings and weekends back. It's a reminder that you don't need enterprise volume to see real value. Even small teams feel the impact. In fact, even more because time savings immediately change the quality of life. And so, regardless of industry size and impact, the impact is the same. Digitization, automation, and integration gives people their time back and removes the daily grind that slows everything down.
David, while we're waiting for a question, I was looking at that graphic that you had up with OnBase being the center of the hub spoke model. Can you kind of speak to exactly how does OnBase talk to the different software tools that it integrates with?
I'll try to keep it high level, not get too technical here, but OnBase, it sits at the center for a reason. A lot of softwares create information, but they don't naturally want to talk to each other. So OnBase uses REST APIs to capture all this information from the different systems, cleans it up, checks it, and then routes it where it needs to go. So dispatch stays a system of record for pricing and ticketing, and your ERP stays the place for financial information and documents. But OnBase handles everything in between: the matching, the validation, the packet creation, correction, exceptions, etc. It's not just storage though; it's also the glue and the hub that holds the entire wheel together. So OnBase is acting as a sort of a traffic director, sending information where it needs to go.
Okay. Also, another question. You kind of mentioned AP and AR processes. Is there any other business process that is commonly used, OnBase is commonly used in?
Oh, it's really OnBase is workflow department agnostic. So if you have a document heavy process that there's a lot of data moving through it, OnBase can be applied there. For example, HR, you tend to have a lot of information that's got to get processed in HR, a lot of documents, W-9s. OnBase can easily digitize that and simplify workflows for the staff to reduce hours spent there. So it can be applied to any industry or department that's processing a ton of documents and information.
Thanks. One more question. So how do you measure ROI on one of these automation processes?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. Well, the way I always look at it is you have your manual process. So the way, for example, let's take BMC. You quantify or figure out how much hours is your staff spending to move documents through a particular process. And when you introduce OnBase properly, it virtually eliminates all that. So, you measure the time spent previously, OnBase does it in minutes, and now you just multiply the hours spent times the labor rate, and you've got the difference there of how much money was spent on doing it previously versus what OnBase is doing.
With those automation savings, can we cut our AP department in half?
I guess some people might want to do that, but our mantra and efforts are to help companies scale efficiently without having to add headcount. And OnBase does that very effectively. You go back to BMC again, increasing their throughput by 300 to 400%. The team, same team size, and they're easily handling the additional volume of the business. And it also goes back to another point. You free up your team's time from the busy, monotonous work. They now can do things that impact your customers and drive better business results for everyone. So it's almost a double-edged sword in that regard that, you're taking the monotonous work away, and now people are doing better, more high-quality work.
Thanks. And we did get a question in the chat from Aiden. How does Hyland CIC play into creating strong foundations for these workflows?
Well, John, take it away. That's where you're to come in here.
Yeah, I couldn't have asked for a better softball. Thanks, Aiden. So appreciate that. We'll go ahead and forge along. David, Larry, great insights around content management with our tool OnBase and how folks have ventured down this journey and created automations, gained efficiencies. The portion that I'm going to talk about now is that next evolution. When we have folks that have taken advantage of workflow and content management and ability to exchange information through integrations, how can we improve that even further? How can we reduce the manual effort and enable our end users and our people to be as the most effective versions of themselves? So before I do that, I just want to give a little story to preface what we're going to talk about today. Seeing you can visually see me, you can take an educated guess where I fall in the age spectrum, but I want to go back about 20 years. When I grew up, I was lucky enough to go through that conversion of the technology age and go from not having traditional computing devices at home or high-tech tools and personal gaming devices, things of that nature. So in the 2005 range, these were terrific. They were cutting edge to be able to get onto the internet at my home, to be able to have a CD player or MP3 player to be able to listen to music in my car or on the road when I exercise, or being able to communicate with folks more conveniently with cell phones or messaging devices or things of that nature. So at the time, it was terrific. It was amazing. But now 20 years later, people look back at this and say, my God, why'd you have to carry around all those things to have an enjoyable life? Because there was the advent of smartphones. So with the evolution of iPhone was the first one to venture down that path, but then obviously several others across platforms. Being able to consolidate your phone, your messenger, your applications for games, being able to go to the internet, things of that nature in one unified path was game changing. It certainly evolved the way that we interface and interact with those type of tools. So you're probably sitting there asking, why? Why am I bringing this up? We're here to talk about automation and augmentation. So the reason that I'm bringing this up is because I see some exact parallels to what a lot of us are dealing with in the technology world. Part of what you talked about, David, in those AP or AR use cases of folks searching for the content to get the answers, to do that matching, to be able to be effective at accomplishing their task and goals. And as it stands today, that's a hurdle. It's a situation where folks are either have to scour to find what they're looking for, or go to different areas, or sometimes have to follow up with the original submitter because it's unreadable or covered in coffee or stains or things that you were talking about. The other aspect of that is with this evolution of AI and technology, folks certainly want to be able to take advantage of it, but not entirely sure how. Not really ready to be able to take advantage of it because it's not like flicking on a switch. You want to make sure that you're providing the appropriate guardrails and intelligence to be impactful and be effective. So as I mentioned about the different pieces of technology and the wonderful things that they did, while it was great 20 years ago, we needed to evolve. And thinking about that in a real world application today, we have these different applications. We have the ERP, the HRIS, the collaboration tools, the line of business systems, our content management repositories like an OnBase or Documentum or FileNet. And for the most part, these are not going to get consolidated and go away because they have a very distinct purpose and need. So while there are going to be some cases of unification, it's not going to be holistic. So because they are separate, we're going to have scenarios where we're still going to have disconnected content. We're still going to have processes and solutions and applications that are disparate in those situations. So, David, you talked about it with, the example with BMC, having multiple ERP solutions, having multiple areas of content and silos of data, and being able to incorporate that together. Well, that's the start of it. We certainly want to bring the information together, but then in turn bring those processes, applications, and solutions together as well. So inefficient integrations and fragmented systems are really what is a detractor for a lot of folks being able to take advantage of some of these tools. Part of the things that I think about when we go through these stories is I know it's been called swivel chair, integrations of folks that have to bounce monitor to monitor, application to application, screen to screen to find what they're looking for. So if we have to do the same with our AR tools, it's only going to advance us so far along. So with that, what can we do? What can we build upon? It really starts with us as Hyland Software, folks like Savvy Source, having that foundational understanding of the content, the silos of information, the process, and the people to make sure that we can take those next steps and advance further. If it's solely based on data, that's been going on for years. Where we're seeing the value is gaining additional context in the documents, the files, the invoices, the bill of ladings and such that an end user has to integrate, interrogate, and evaluate. So in our world, there's a lot of different things that we have delivered for our clients across the board, focusing on, accounting, obviously with financial management, accounts payable, accounts receivable. If we're talking about logistics, being able to accurately track, deliveries and shipments and reconciliation in that world, human resources. Also, there's a lot of verticals that we have solutions that we've solved for. So not just the cross-industry space, but whether it's healthcare, government, or financial services. So to David's point, the principles and philosophies leveraged are certainly scalable depending on the need. So while everyone is unique with their own pain points and troubles, we can help solve them with the toolkit that's available. As we look at AI, what are some of those common hurdles, common pain points? And really, we've touched upon them, for the financial aspect is having the limitation and fragmentation of data that reduces, whether it be the internal end user or your client's experiences, supply chain issues, to recognize appropriate reconciliation of deliveries, things of that nature. If we're talking about the insurance world, it's a scenario that all of us are I shouldn't say all of us, because we might have someone from, a state that doesn't require it, but here in Ohio, it's a requirement to have car insurance. It's something that with my mortgage, I have to have a homeowner's insurance policy. So making sure that those tools are available to make my experience as a consumer as convenient as possible. So we're going to talk about some of those things that how it can experience and how it can help that cause. Question of the day is, well, how? I think a lot of folks will certainly want to know what we're accomplishing and how we're doing it, because AI is such a buzzword, as you mentioned, David. It's something that a lot of folks are evaluating, investigating, and even using at some form and some level. So, folks on the line, if you've gone to Google, if you've used ChatGPT, if you have a Copilot inside your Microsoft solution, things of that nature, those are all forms of AI tools. They're more broad spectrum, they're more global, because it's a scenario that they're not really defined to your individual data and enterprise information, but it's still things that can help drive improvements. As simple as I go to Google, ask a question, try to find out what the answer is. It's going to give me a generated response and try to get to the point that I'm trying to make. But if you go to Google and ask a question of can you tell me the current status of invoice number 1234? For BMC Enterprises, you're not going to get what the answer you're looking for, because that's not what it's intended to do. That's not what it's focused on. That's what Content Innovation Cloud is intended to do, though. So when we talk about our solutions, first and foremost, we want to federate the content. So bringing together the information from multiple repositories. This can be a hybrid type solution. As it says in the name, Content Innovation Cloud is a cloud-based environment, but those on-premise solutions that exist today, we can tie into. It doesn't have to be cloud-based with no migration. We're not asking you to move and transition, things of that nature. It's more of a transactional situation. Governance, of course, making sure that any security, rights, permissions, and compliance that exist today in those platforms are being respected, because that's really the big concern with those generic type AI models, a ChatGPT or things of that nature. You don't want to feed it your proprietary information and your shall we say, secret sauce. So if you don't do that, you can't obviously get positive answers back or pointed answers back. And then lastly, using the AI tools that are at our disposal to gain deeper insights, to improve those automations further, and be able to take intelligent actions agentically without end user oversight in some cases. But of course, user in the loop. We want to make sure that it is a viable, reasonable action to take place, and get our users further down the line of a process. Take away some of that busy work and allow them to make more informed decisions more timely. So with that said, really, I've kind of mentioned these already on the last slide, but, being able to reveal the deeper insights and take the agentic action is the steps that we're looking to go beyond. But that really starts with building the AI foundation. So what does that kind of mean? When we're talking about AI foundation, it's really being able to understand the content in a more contextual manner. It's not something where we're just connecting to it, but we're gaining deeper insights. We're looking at the existing processes that take place and augmenting them even further. So if in a 10-step workflow process, we can automate and replace steps 2, 3, 4, and 5 with an AI tool, that's what we're looking to do. It's not a matter of taking something start to finish and completely revamping a process, because we understand a knowledge worker has certain skills that can't be replaced in some points. So we want to make sure the things that can be replaced are done. The things that advance a timeline, gain efficiencies are there. So it really starts with that connectivity. So we talked about being able to connect to different styles of information. We already mentioned OnBase. We have several content repositories within the Hyland software platform because we've been doing this for 30 years. So we have OnBase, Alfresco, Nuxio, enterprise imaging tools, things of that nature. Apologize, I went back a slide, didn't intend to. There we go. But not every customer that we're going to interact with and not every solution is going to be a Hyland solution. So of course we want to be able to connect to other data sources. Those can be other content repositories. So if you're already using the likes of a Documentum or a FileNet or a SharePoint site, we can connect to those as well. Your ERP system, your HRIS system, a file storage, an S3 bucket, whatever the case may be. The goal is to gain insight with wherever the content resides and making sure that we're having connections to the right areas to improve that overall understanding. From there, as I mentioned, we want to make sure that we respect the governance, respect the security. So if users aren't able to access certain areas of content based on their role and their responsibility, we're going to obviously continue that trend because we don't want to unleash the world for no good reason. I think someone gave a good example around someone deploying an HR agent so that way folks could ask things against, their content repository and get information around their policies and procedures and PTO time and things of that nature. And they didn't put walls into it. So the first thing that someone asked is, how much does the CEO get paid? And you can imagine how that went. So needless to say, we want to be mindful of those guardrails and evolve it. So as that becomes a reality, that creates what's called a context engine. So as I mentioned, integration, passing information, being able to get it to where it needs to be valuable. A context engine means that I'm creating that knowledge like an end user. I'm being an understandable tool of those different pieces and components in certain specific areas to drive these processes further. And as we look to drive them, it can be through intelligent documentation, document processing. It can be from asking questions through a knowledge discovery. It can be creating disparate agents to create a life cycle or finalize processes, things of that nature. So if we have the correct foundation of that understanding, all of a sudden our AI tools become that more accurate, that more pointed. And then all of which, we want to take our understanding to bring those agents together, develop those solutions that align for those industries that we were talking about, because the reality is, these agents need to be able to orient and retrieve information. They need to make decisions. They need to be able to take those actions that we want to take off the plate of an end user, and then look back at their decision-making process to learn from it, to grow from it, to be better, instead of just, shall we say, former RPA tools that can only do same steps over and over again. So with that, most people are usually excited at this point. Instead of hearing me talk the whole time and seeing PowerPoint slides, I wanted to show a little bit around what this looks like in reality. So this is all available today, everything that I've discussed and everything I've talked about. We've actually had components and functionality going back over 18 months now, close to 2 years. So it's a scenario that these are not vaporware. These are not pie in the sky capabilities. The one I'm going to talk about is actually a patient claims processing solution. So any one of us that's been on the other side of the coin with a healthcare situation where you have to deal with a provider, or insurance company, or inaccurate pre-authorizations, or whatever the case may be, it can be a laborious type situation, whether it's admissions documentation, whether it's that assessment. David, I know you're talking about the AP operations of the number of end users and time that they took. For this particular use case, it was actually 120 full-time employees doing document processing. So certainly a very scalable, situation of what they had to do and how they had to solve for it. So, the impact was, certainly positive, certainly efficiency, certainly, reduction in work hours and processing times and things of that nature. From a client perspective, people are able to get their services quicker, reduction in denial of claims, things of that nature. So overall, just a more positive experience. So same holds true across the board. The goal here, of course, is to operational efficiencies gained, money saved. But at the end of the day, whether it's your customer, whether it's your patient, whether it's your constituent, what can we do to make their lives easier to do business with us? And when I say us, I mean the collective us. So with that said, these are all pretty short, but I'll go ahead and drive along the conversation as we go. So looking at this view, this is actually someone logging into the Content Innovation Cloud. The first thing they clicked on was Studio Modeling. That's our behind the scenes configuration. And this is our interface for intelligent document processing. So in this particular use case, we already have some pre-configured classes, definement, but really it's quick and simple and easy to add a new class. Because we're using pre-trained LLMs that have dealt with millions and millions of documents from our clients already, we already have this information. We just have to add a little context. We don't have to send in samples. We don't have to give examples. Bouncing along, it's actually going through and we're connecting to those data sources. So we can import categories and data elements and things of that nature. So if I have an OnBase system associated to this, I can make sure it's mapped and mirrored, and I'm not having to define those configurations. So what's going on here is we're actually bringing in a few documents. They're coming in a big bundle from a lockbox, 37 pages, but those 37 pages are all different types of files. So we're using AI agents to actually separate and identify what pages belong together, and of those pages where they should fall in classification. So whether it's correspondence or additional documentation, and then you'll see percentages here for confidence levels, that we have the right document going to the right class, what we're extracting off the page, the confidence of the OCR tools, as well as the actual information. It is able to do tremendous job with handwriting. You're seeing a Spanish language document here. It's converting the information on the fly for the end user. All of this is done without samples, configuration, and definement, because we're using the collective power of these AI tools to get up and running from the get-go. The last thing that you see is going on here, we're trying to identify, is it signed? So not what does the signature say, but is it a signed document? Do we have that authority and authorization to go forward with it? So with that said, we're going to obviously proceed after we have the data, after we have the information. What can we then do next with it? This is the workflow engine. So being able to take those data elements, take that additive information, and drive the process tools. So this is kind of what I'm talking about with embedding it or augmenting those processes that exist today. So we may be doing a portion where we're extracting more information. We may be doing something that we're helping out with the validation process or the advancement of getting information to a user when important, when valuable. But with that, it's something that it's not one size fits all. It's a matter of what is important to expedite and improve that process. If I'm thinking in a financial management world, I certainly think it would make sense to grab that information, especially handwritten, paper copies, things that are difficult to read and understand. Actually, I had a conversation with a client a few weeks ago where it was a distribution company that dropped things off and they're taking pictures with camera phones. And you can imagine a truck driver and taking a picture with a camera phone, how important they were trying to make sure it's centered and clear and, everything that is valuable for us to do our work on the back end. But being able to get that information extracted conveniently and easily can help kickstart a process. But then we have tools to be able to further augment that. So this is kind of the front end of getting the information in, getting connectivity to those data sources to improve the process. So that's terrific. That helps that cause. But what is it that we can do further with our AI tools? So I showed a little bit about intelligent document processing, being able to grab the information, classify, data extraction. Secondarily, Hyland Automate is our workflow engine tool, being able to take action, connectivity with an existing data source to use that information to create the intelligence and context to drive the process further. But now once we have those processes, what can I do to have agents take additional action, do some of that work, and help that cause? So bouncing back to where we were, in our intelligence, we want to create an agent. So this is actually creation of an agent. Colleen's actually the one that is the one that recorded this for me. So going through, and we have a few different options for large language models that can be leveraged. We use a lot of the most common tools, so thinking about the Claudes or Metalama or Amazons of the world. These are situations where they're proven models, ones that have significant capabilities, but some are better for different use cases than others. But we certainly go through and do what we can to give you guidance and make recommendations to get the best results. With that said, you want to define what this agent should do. So with that said, we're going to do it in what's called an MCP, Model Context Protocol, which is the universal language for AI agents. So that way, as we build agents, it's done using natural language and it's done using prompts instead of coding. So that'll allow you to not only get results quicker, but embed it within existing solutions. So here's an example of an existing workflow in an OnBase solution where a user would have taken action for routing or prioritization, and we're now augmenting that by having an AI agent take over that portion of the process. So again, we're not eliminating a user. We're just trying to get them a couple steps further to the end result so they can be more efficient, so they can be more effective. So with that, we're going to go ahead and that is the end here. So I'm going to bounce over and go back. But really the goal there that I was trying to get behind is with an AI agent, it is natural language prompts. It is using tools that are valuable. It is defining outcomes and defining the content that agent should have access to. But all that said, that doesn't mean that we're starting from scratch. We look to use what is existing today for our workflow and augment steps in the process, areas of value to improve what is currently available today. So what I showed, placement of those human steps, embedding itself within the process as it stands today, and making sure that we can take action as quickly as possible without developing tons of custom code. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is really what are those agentic actions that will continue on in the workflow process to make us even more efficient, and then how can we make this a better user experience for when a user does have to get into the loop and take action because there is exception, because there is a need that goes beyond what we've defined in our bots. So with that said, this is actually our OnBase apps interface. So this is something where a user would log into to see how much work they have to accomplish. Total amount processed today being 8,000, but then there are other categories, things that are denials, things that have taken place that a user needs to get involved in. So with that said, here's an example where it's an additional document request. So think about a financial process. Hey, I'm missing X portion of the file, whether that's the invoice, the bill of lading, or so on and so forth, and being able to have that aggregate amount of information presented to the user. So the agent's giving it a summary of what it understood from the documents that are present, the misalignment in categories or information. But taking it a step further, if we need to do ad hoc questions. So while the summary was great, it didn't give me exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something a little more holistic because I'm going beyond just a single process. I'm trying to look at the overall. So why do I usually have an invoice exception handling? Is it because of missing content? Is it because I have a particular vendor that's not billing me appropriately? It's not matching my information. That's what we use knowledge discovery for, to get those larger answers, get the information that's holistic across our processes to be more impactful and more insightful. So it doesn't have to be a one-to-one. We can embed workflows and certainly improve those actions for that particular process. But sometimes we want to take a step back and understand the full scale of what's going on and how to improve overall. So these are just some of the ways that we're looking to take that contextual information that we brought together and get the deeper understanding across the board. As we look at this particular use case, if it was only tied to a single system, if it was a manual effort by an end user, this could take hours or days or sometimes not even at all because it's just too much information. So being able to make it quicker and more convenient to get what you're looking for to drive efficiency. So with that, we were able to intelligently automate the process. We were able to take actions from an end user and offload them to an AI agent without recreating the entire process. We're able to gain insight to our different data sources to create better context around the whole process and improve holistically. At the end of the day, the end result is being able to improve that customer's experience, that patient experience, that constituent experience. So it's not just automation, it's around augmentation. So streamline your intake, making sure that what comes in, whether it be paper, whether it be email, whether it be scanned, whether it be any file type that you can think of, improve that ingestion process, reduce the manual work of the end users, being able to summarize the information and provide that summarization and recommended next steps to an end user instead of them doing the interrogation themselves. And then lastly, recognizing patterns. So being able to recognize what vendors, what providers, what delivery agents are not up to snuff, are making our lives harder, are not providing the accurate pricing or delivery metrics, so we can make informed decisions holistically. So with that, a couple of quick referenceable items from folks that have already deployed, already using some of these use cases, and big shock, fragmentation of their processes, their content, their solutions certainly was a core pain point, and being able to bring that together brought efficiency and value. But like I said, it's not something that has to be a complete revamp of a process. Provide connectivity. Focus on those most difficult challenges, the things that take the most amount of time for an end user to evaluate, resolve, or exercise. And that can be a disparate of information, or that can be a just overwhelming amount of data. And then from there, you can expand. Once you have the tool set, once you have the capabilities, once you recognize the value it can provide, it can be a financial process, then it can be, a employee management, file management process. Thinking about something paired to financial processes, vendor agreements, recognizing that insights around your vendors and what they do and the terms and conditions, certainly can improve the contracting process. So there's a lot of different ways that it can be leveraged, but it's certainly not something that you have to exercise all in one shot. So with that, we want to be able to connect those systems. We want to gain the context. And maybe most importantly, we want to have consistency, because this is a solution that is defined to only an enterprise customer's data, not outside sources, not the web, not everything. So we can make sure that what is provided, what is authored, what is proposed is very pointed and very tailored to a client's solution. So with that, I'll go ahead and take a pause, see if we have any further questions or chat. I know we're cutting close to time, so anyone that wants to get in some questions, please feel free. Larry, do you have anything in the chat or anything you wanted to share?
We just got a question that came in through the chat. When something goes wrong, a missing ticket, pricing dispute, mismatched quantities, how does that issue get discovered today, early or late?
Truth be told, I would say early when we're talking about using the Content Innovation Cloud, or even with just automation tools with OnBase. So when we showed that front-end process, being able to use intelligent document processing to gather the appropriate metrics and classification tools, that's what we use to begin the drive of the process. So I'm grabbing the information off the invoice, table data, line item details, dollar amounts, and POs, comparing that to information in the ERP system where you generated the purchase order and made that request, comparing that to the bill of lading. So that way we can do that evaluation. Did I get what I received? Did I get it at the price point that I asked for? And if those answers are yes, then absolutely it can move along in the process. If those answers are no, that's where we can trigger an AI agent to evaluate that particular packet and send it to an end user to say, hey, there's an exception here. I looked at invoice, I looked at purchase order, I looked at bill of lading, I looked at these data elements, and here's what my comparison found. These match, these are as expected, this is where we have the misalignment. I would recommend doing blank. As it learns, as it recognizes an end user's path, philosophy of business, it will grow and get better. But that is something that I think is invaluable, whether it's an AP solution, whether it's a loan submission with a bank, whether it's a healthcare use case. If we can do that greater evaluation like an end user is doing and allow them to take quicker decisions, that means we can solve the problems faster, we can get paid faster, and we can make our customers happier.
John, really appreciate the excellent breakdown, and wish we had more time to get the details a bit more, but thank you so much to everyone for joining. I hope it was informative as much as I found it informative. To the questions that's come in just now, we can take that offline just so we're not going over everyone's time. Please reach out to us via LinkedIn. John's contact details are listed there. We're happy to connect and take the conversation further from here. So thank you again very much. You all have a great afternoon.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.